Hey everyone, Tim Vanderswag here, and this is my cultural identity narrative presentation. Like everyone, my cultural identity is kind of a mix and mashup of different influences. I was born to Dutch parents who immigrated to Canada, and was born in St. Catharines, Ontario, and then moved to the States and spent my formative years in West Michigan, before spending 9 years of my early adult life living in and traveling through different states and other countries as well. I was raised and catechized in the Dutch Christian Reformed tradition and was also influenced greatly by spending 9 years in the cultural amalgamation that is the United States Marine Corps. All those different cultural processes and contributing factors have led to the cultural identity that makes me who I am. So firstly, I was strictly raised to see that the church is a greater and more intimate family than perhaps even that of a blood family. So to that extent, there was a collectivist outlook on how I regarded the world. I understood that through my actions, and though my actions were my responsibility, I could also allow my individual goals to merge with the greater mission of the church. And that was kind of made even stronger by joining the Marine Corps, which is an organization that's known to bend or break the will of the individual to fulfill the mission of the whole. So that was also extremely influential in my viewing that group goal as a guideline for determining my own individual goals. I think, therefore, on the individualism and collectivism spectrum, I was culturally influenced to lie somewhere in the middle, neither being fully individualistic nor fully collectivist. Secondly, I was brought up to take a very traditional approach to male and female gender roles. My parents, my friends' parents, my uncles, aunts, and grandparents all exhibited traditional gender roles. Males, the husbands and fathers in the families, were also the primary, if not the sole breadwinners in almost every case, while the females, so the wives and mothers, exhibited nurturing and caring tendencies as stay-at-home moms. To some extent, this masculinity, femininity mindset was influenced also by not just that strict religious upbringing that I had, but also supplemented by the very masculine culture in the Marines. And that was for both male and female Marines. There was basically masculine traits were the traits that most people wanted to kind of exhibit to their peers. Thirdly, I think I was most influenced by my love for American history and for my American background when it comes to power distance. America is built on the premise that the individual should be able to affect the outcome of government and have a hand and a say in their own governance. And this mindset, though, I think for myself was counterbalanced by the strict adherence to authority in Dutch families, especially in traditional Christian Dutch families, with the father being seen as an unquestioned authority figure. However, I was brought up to be able to see the liberty of the American political system and that authoritarianism of the Vanderswag household as being two bastions of what makes a society healthy, and not as warring viewpoints. So I was able to hold both of those together, I think. Essentially, we have some level of choice in our governance, but God has also placed leaders into our lives and into our homes that we must obey in accordance with His Word. Fourthly, there is an element of risk-taking that I think is pretty common among Western Europeans, including the Dutch. Really, over the last couple hundred years, many were willing to immigrate to a new land with new customs and new cultures in hopes of finding a better life for themselves and their family. There's a wanderlust aspect to this romanticizing of uncertainty or risk, and I have definitely inherited this trait from my immigrant parents. They moved around a lot even in my lifetime, moving from Canada to Michigan, and then from Michigan to Arkansas, and then back. And then I kind of did a lot of that myself, moving from Michigan to North Carolina and then to California for really the last 10 to 11 years, and moving back here as well 2.5 years ago. Though I may not know all that the future holds, I am willing to take risks to pursue a better tomorrow for myself and for my family, and ultimately for God's kingdom, if He will choose to use me. So Hastede would probably class my cultural identity as being quite low on the uncertainty avoidance dimension, even if that tends to go against my collectivist leanings. based on some of the stuff I was reading in the textbook, perhaps. Finally, I would say that culturally, I lie again in the middle of Hofstede's last orientation, that of long-term versus short-term. Though I was raised fully in a Western culture that glorifies keeping up with the Joneses and with consumerism, I was also raised again under that umbrella of Dutch Christian conservatism. This conservatism makes much ado about saving for the future and utilizing short-term goals as stepping stones to reach those long-term goals, even if those are lifetime or posterity goals. Though I'm much more willing to spend money now than I used to be for current things, for enjoyment or entertainment. There's always that stingy Dutch guy in the back of my head who warns me to save for every penny spent. I'm also hardwired by God's word, I think, and his work in my soul to be dedicated to and motivated by the mission God has for his church in this world. So I also want to partner with God in aligning my short and long-term goals. In analyzing my cultural influences and upbringing, I can see how my primary socialization has evolved, maybe in negative ways, but I would say mostly in positive ways. As a child, my world really consisted of the Heritage Reformed denomination that I was a part of. And in many ways, the way I was raised, going to a school even that was affiliated with that church, that was the world, and everyone else was seen as outsiders, if not apostates. So it was very much a holier-than-thou organization in some ways, just because we didn't really have any sort of interaction outside of that small cultural Dutch group. However, as I've grown up physically, emotionally, and spiritually, I believe that God has matured my understanding. He has made me much more open to being a student of the world, to learn from other cultures, other viewpoints, and even other religious views, to see how people can be influenced in good ways from their religion, whether or not I believe it's a false religion. For much of my life before I left home at 17, my friends all looked like me, they talked like me, they believed like me. But when I joined the Marine Corps and left home, all of a sudden it was like the world came into color for the first time from being black and white. I made friends from all sorts of cultural backgrounds, religions, lifestyles, ethnicities, doctrinal viewpoints. Pretty much anyone and everyone was in the Marine Corps. So I was able to recognize that I do not have a monopoly on what right looks like culturally. And with that, I think I was fortunate to have been able to leave my heavily ethnocentric behaviors and mindsets in the past. In conclusion, I find that I still tend to think my way and my view and my culture are the right one, but I'm also at the same time in the process of being transformed into being a citizen of the world. Ultimately, I believe that all of humanity is made in the image of God, and what is most important above culture, creed, or upbringing is that one has a right relationship with Jesus Christ. So I'm thankful to God that though I may differ from people worldwide, if any person that I meet is a child of God, is saved by Jesus, I have more in common with them than I would have with a blood relative who has not been saved by God's grace. And I think it's that level of unity that I am striving for and that I most want to define my cultural identity. Thank you.